What's going on, everybody? So in this video, we are going to be talking about what's going on in the NFT market, some major crypto hacks, as well as some updates on some of the top projects. All right, so diving right into the sentiment of what's going on in the market, seems like everything once again is trading sideways, pretty boring. Ethereum going to be from, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and it seems like it's just ranging in that space. Essentially, Ethereum kind of is getting an upgrade, and a lot of people are buying Ethereum in anticipation that potentially Ethereum might explode after this whole merge and special event happens. Now, just keep in mind that there's another perspective where the price of this merge is probably priced in, meaning that people are buying the rumors essentially, and then once the merge happens, a lot of people probably will sell right before the merge happens because you don't know what will happen in the end. And we see that a lot in the NFT markets, we see that a lot in the crypto space, where they don't really care about the actual event itself, but they care about people caring about the event, and that's why they all buy. So that might be a potential catalyst to why Ethereum has been pretty steady at the 1.6 ETH range. So you want to definitely be careful, where unless you know or you feel very confident it's going to go up, just understand that a lot of people will probably sell the news, and then things may not be as grand and special as people make it to be. And a lot of people lose money that way because a lot of people don't understand these things are kind of priced in and they dump the bag on you. Going into Nonsense NFT 500 index, seems like NFTs have been slowing down a little bit. We've seen a lot of floor prices for a lot of projects, whether it's blue chip, smaller projects, they have been dropping a bit. It's normal, right? It goes up and down. There's always cycles and things like that, like mini cycles. So nothing unusual, as long as it's kind of trading sideways, it's fine with me. So a quick update on 1984. As we did talk about yesterday, there's this whole drama of people, trying to fight over control over the company and things like that. So in the end, what's happening is that a lot of people are resigning from 1984, like a lot of the original team. Even that boy over there, shout out to that boy, he said due to events, he is resigning his role as a community manager. And it seems like a lot of structural changes, a lot of people leaving, lead artist is gone. So if the lead artist is gone, it's kind of hard to complete the PFP, right? And then from there, it seems like he got blocked by 1984. So I think the way 1984 is kind of handling their PR is quite dangerous, because they're kind of burning everyone that leaves and burning every bridge in a sense from a PR perspective, from my personal opinion. And you could disagree, that's totally fine. Probably going to be difficult for them to rebuild that community if they kind of have this reputation, right? If things don't work out, people disagree, that's fine, but there's always ways to do it more professional, where you're not just like calling people out and like making this whole drama. They're definitely making noise in that regard. Maybe it's a strategy, I'm not sure. It's just one important note that I think you should all kind of understand, is that Alex over here, which is one of the co-founders of the project, so far, since 1984 started, they raised $500,000 from investors' capital, and he is personally paying everybody back with his own assets. And from my understanding, he was a successful founder at previous companies. He just wants to make it right. He's willing to just pay the $500,000 to all the investors to kind of get out of the situation, I guess. When it comes to what's right, what's wrong, everyone's going to have their different opinion, but the fact that someone would go out their way and like go down the drain $500,000 just to make amends to all the investors and things like that definitely does say a lot. And so, shout out to Alex. Even though he disagrees, he's not really making this whole drama about it, and he's just kind of like moving forward with his project vow and everything like that. So I definitely can respect that, and I definitely understand that. So, it is what it is, and let's go ahead and move on to the next project. Now, in other news, talking about some mainstream companies, Starbucks is going to be unveiling their Web3 based reward program next month. Now, there's not too much information about how this NFT Web3 program is going to work, but it's definitely a good sign for crypto and NFTs that these large public companies who have a global presence around the world are looking at Web3 very seriously. They're putting their names behind it, and they're risking their reputation to actually pull this off, right? And if you didn't already know, Starbucks has this loyalty program where people can like get a card. Essentially, it's almost like a debit card. You give money into the card. Anytime you go to a Starbucks, you can use your card, and it's almost like a bank in a sense, right? I believe they have like a lot more money than a lot of banks out there. They created this whole concept of like creating digital dollars within Starbucks. So getting into crypto, getting into NFTs is actually not too far-fetched from what Starbucks is already doing. In a sense, they have already succeeded when it comes to creating digital currency of their own in a sense, but they just never call it NFTs, right? Or they never call it crypto. And so I think it's a natural transition. I think when people buy Starbucks, most likely they're not going to do a PFP project. It's probably going to be like, after buying 10 drinks, you're going to get an art by this, special artist NFT, and then maybe you can do something with that. Or maybe you can get a special edition like merchandise, a cup, right? Even for me, like I buy the Starbucks like water bottles and stuff like that. And like if you can maybe redeem your rewards and get some NFTs that can somehow get some physical items that are actually of value that I would already pay money for, then I can definitely see NFTs and crypto really working for Starbucks, just because they have it so dialed in when it comes to like managing digital payments and like collecting money and then having people use those digital monies to like buy things in their store, right? And so that's definitely a use case that they have. It's always like when people create a token, when people create an NFT and things like that, the challenge most people have is like, how do you create demand? Starbucks already has demand. Take out the word crypto and NFTs and you just say digital membership. they already got it locked down. And I think most likely if they do this right, they will probably be one of the forerunners when it comes to implementing Web3 into a large-scale public company. Now, speaking of large-scale, Solana hot wallets recently just got targeted by a multi-million-dollar hack. Over 8,000 internet-connected hot wallets, meaning, you know, not using a ledger or whatever to secure your funds. They've been compromised and people literally just got drained out. Just the other day, I saw this tweet. He was like, woke up to see my Phantom wallet got robbed. You know, it's only like $3 inside. So obviously he had more of that. It's kind of crazy to wake up thinking that like, oh, you know, we have like a bunch of money in here and it's like only $3 left. So it's quite sad actually that this happened, and I think they are still trying to figure out where the hack came from, what was the vulnerability. There's a lot of like speculation of what it was, so we're not going to go too deep into that. The fact is millions of dollars drained, and it's quite unfortunate. At the end of the day, yes, you know, if you put in a hot wallet, you can always get hacked. There's always vulnerabilities, but that's why if you have money, you know, it's a significant amount, it makes sense to have a hard wallet, right? I think that's crypto where a lot of people got drained out, like people I personally know got fished, lose their NFTs and things like that. It happens all the time, right? But that's the name of the game when it's a wild, wild west. And it's quite unfortunate, honestly, but it is what it is. Now, in other news, this Twitter personality over here wrote a pretty long thread about Cyberkongz recently. Now, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't buy Cyberkongz. I myself have a bunch of Cyberkongz babies and VX, but I wanted to kind of go over this because, you know, Cyberkongz, since the early days of the NFTs, definitely have innovated a lot. He's and a lot of projects have kind of taken inspiration from what they've done and applied it themselves, which is absolutely great. And before we get into this, let's go ahead and start about the challenges that Cyberkongz currently has from an outside looking in perspective. It's a cool project. You know, it is one of the top projects, I would say, in terms of like innovation. However, in order for a lot of the mechanics of what they've built to work, they have to constantly increase demand for their collectible. And I think before the challenge was that a lot of people bought it because of the passive income from the bananas. If you didn't know, Genesis makes like 10 bananas a day, which you can sell for Ethereum or whatever. And then they had this play and collect game, which was very exciting before it came out. And then a lot of people didn't really enjoy it because you would have to pay money to play the game. If you spend money to play the game, you kind of rolling the dice and maybe you'll make money back, maybe you'll lose money. And that's what people didn't like. They didn't know what the reward was going to be at the end. It costs more money to play than what you can potentially win, and that kind of kills the game, right? And so I'm not saying it's dead, but I'm saying that it definitely lost a lot of momentum. For one, you know, breeding was a very exciting thing at the time, you know, in the past, where Genesis can make more NFTs, which is babies, and you can argue that it's like kind of Ponzi-like, where it, you know, he just keeps going down. I wouldn't call it a Ponzi, but it's just like the only way it works is like if there's demand, right? Obviously, they got to rework their branding, which makes sense because at the time, in the past, you know, everything was hot. You didn't have to have the cleanest website, didn't have to be the most mainstream, and it would work. But now, obviously, because there's a lot more competition and there's more of a need to onboard mainstream people into NFTs, they have to change their branding, which makes sense. And everybody has to do this, right? It's not just Cyberkongz. Everybody has to think about this. Play and collect updates. I think they're still going to have the same problem of like generating demand. The ecosystem only works if people want to buy the assets that you can potentially win. So I would say this isn't really solved. It's just like trying to improve it, but I think core problem's still there. I would say the main important thing to look at is how are they going to increase the demand? Because without the increase of demand and more people knowing what Cyberkongz is and more people being like, I want to collect that, that's really the most important thing, right? I think in the past, the challenge that they had was they put so much emphasis on play to earn, especially because Axie Infinity was popping off, and obviously Cyberkongz took a lot of inspiration from Axie Infinity. They went that route, but it didn't really work, right? And even when you look at Axie Infinity, if you look at all time, right, it was super high at one point, and then it just like kind of fell off like a rock, and play to earn, the narrative kind of just like went away. And so that's why they're trying to move away from that play to earn narrative. Obviously it doesn't work when things aren't pumping up. They're shifting away to making Cyberkongz a collectible. So they're definitely changing their messaging and narrative to the public and saying like, hey, we are a collectible at the end of the day. You should want to buy because you want to join the club. You should want to collect because these are nice pieces. And I think that's more of a realistic angle that they can take from the long term. Also, as a collectible, they want to kind of be everywhere in terms of working with different brands and kind of putting the Cyberkongz flavor on top of these brands to give it a little bit more edge, right? And so I can see them, you know, working with esports teams in the future, right? Or like gaming companies or whatever fits their narrative in terms of branding. And, you know, that exposure actually does help them a lot. And also it can be a potential revenue generator for their IP. And the last piece is they have like a advisory incubator kind of thing where they try to help projects that help their ecosystem. And I think they learned from the past that previous projects they advised and helped out, the Littles and Zen Apes, when you help another PFP, it doesn't quite help your PFP, it just creates more PFPs. And I think they're moving away from that and just trying to support projects that directly help their PFP, right? Interesting updates. Most likely a lot of projects will look at what they're doing and kind of implement the same thing. So we're probably going to see a lot of other IP brands that kind of of fell into the similar play to earn direction and they realize they have to like make a pivot, they're probably going to do something similar, or they have to find a unique proposition that makes them a little different, right? Good way to think about it is like, what community are you serving, and build an NFT project around that. And the final piece of news that we have is that Sony's HUGEE innovation is going to be more involved in sports NFTs. Now, the HUGEE innovation is basically like branch of Sony where they focus on technology innovation relating to sports. So if you ever watch like soccer or basketball, football, and then there's a camera that follows a tennis ball, if it hits the line or if it's out, they create that technology, right? I'm sure like a lot of large tournaments and stuff use. And then NFT tech is going to be kind of like a firm or agency that helps other brands with their NFT projects. What is their particular involvement in these projects? It doesn't really say. He just gives a summary of what the project is. You know, this is actually kind of confusing news. So it's like, you know, they're going to partner with each other. I did read all of this and it's like, well, what are they going to create? What are they going to do? It's not very clear, right? Because if this technology is meant for capturing moments, maybe they're going to capture moments into NFTs and sell them. Who knows, right? Kind of bullish in the fact that Sony is getting into NFTs in general. So let's just keep it at that. And we'll just follow along to see if there are any major clearer updates that clearly show what they're going to do with NFTs. With that said, that's everything we got to cover for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you guys in the next one.